Welcome back to the In Between podcast. Today I am joined by Shenelle, and this conversation was very educational for me because I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I was naive to anything about obesity, the gastric sleeve surgery, all these different aspects of weight loss and Shenelle's story. Shenelle has gone through so much more than you can imagine. She's recovered and has come through several different types of addiction. And now she is making so much difference. She has built a program that teaches people after weight loss of any kind, from GLP-1s to gastric sleeve, how to properly eat and discover the beliefs that are getting them back into the pattern of either gaining weight or anything from food noise, which is popular right now, to food addiction. She is teaching people how to eat with whole foods, how to address their stories, their beliefs. And honestly, the thing that I enjoyed most out of this conversation is she's teaching people how to remove the victim mentality and take responsibility for what they're doing and how they're living their lives. This was such an incredible conversation. Shenelle does not sugarcoat anything or pretend it's easy, which is an important addition to the conversation. So join us for this conversation where we talk about addiction, behavior, and what it actually takes to change from the inside out. Welcome to the In Between podcast. I'm your host, Cassidy Owen, and I'm the founder of Cassidy Lynn Social, a social media management agency dedicated to helping brands find their authentic voice online. But more importantly, I'm someone who believes that the real magic happens in the messy middle, the in-between moments that shape who we become. Every week, I sit down with female founders, entrepreneurs, and incredible humans who are navigating growth, failure, and everything in between. So grab a nice coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's conversation. Shenelle, welcome to the In Between podcast. I am so excited to be joined by you, and honestly, reading your story, you are the In Between podcast. You make up and embody the In Between podcast because the amount of in-betweens that you've went through in your life and come back from, and then been knocked down again and come back from, truly you're an inspiration, and I'm so excited to share your story. So welcome to the In Between podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I would love to just jump in and take a look at your life before 2022 and hear your story and really how you got to the place to start your business.
Yeah. You have to take it back a handful of years prior to that. I am a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. I got sober in December 27th of 2020. It feels like forever ago at this point, but really was not that terribly long ago. I have been drinking pretty heavily since I was a teenager. I grew up in the music industry. My parents are musicians, and so I was just kind of exposed to the bar scene really young. And the whole no resentment against my parents. They're great and amazing. It was all my choices. They weren't encouraging it. They had a lot of opinions about it as well. And I spent most of my youth just drinking and partying, and that's what I did. This isn't, the Rewrite is my second business I owned. I owned a business for about a decade in marketing, and that's what brought me out to Las Vegas back in 2011. And when I got to Vegas, I got introduced to not just drinking, but drinking and cocaine. So now I could drink for 3 days straight. It was absolutely wonderful at the time. And by 2018, my business had deeply suffered. I wasn't showing up for the people that, I should be showing up for. And I was also a parent at this point. I had a child. My son was born in 2016. I was sober for my pregnancy. I got it together then. I thought, I'll be this mom who's going to go to happy hour, and I'm going to come home at 10 p.m. where there's going to be a babysitter that I'm going to come home to. And oh my gosh, impossible. I was out until 10 the next day coming up with weird lies about why I'm just leaving my child with a babysitter. Just doing really sketchy things with a kid in tow to keep up with the life I had created prior to my pregnancy. But my career started to suffer and things got pretty dark in 2019. I had got pregnant and I had not been sober for some time at that point. I was a daily drinker, and I didn't see that this was going to work being a parent, and the person I was involved with was married, and it was a pretty crappy situation I landed myself in. And my house was in foreclosure. My cars were repossessed. We were just starting to hear the big C word. COVID was just around the corner. We hadn't experienced it here in the US yet. And this individual I was with, along with, me not being a very sane person at the time, came up with the idea that I was going to terminate the pregnancy. They're going to help me get my house out of foreclosure. And only one of those two scenarios actually took place. And I was full of so much like shame and guilt at that moment that I decided I was just going to drink every day until I died. That was sort of the plan. And I did it for a year with COVID and the bars were shut down and I'm drinking at home, which wasn't something I normally had ever done. And I don't know, a year later, I woke up one day and I was done. I was just done. And I couldn't give you a good reason on why. Nothing special happened that day. I ghosted my kid, but like that had been the absolute bare minimum of expectation on me at that point. That was what I was doing. And I just decided I was done drinking in 2020. I white knuckled it for that first year. I went to Facebook like every other person and was like, I'm not drinking for a whole year. Like, I'm going to do the hard 75. I'm going to get it together. I was like 300 pounds at the time too, so it was a long, whole different life ago. And I'm glad I went on the socials and made that big public announcement. I mean, my career today exists solely because of my socials. And, I went on and make that announcement. And a week later, I was in a bar and I was trying to order a drink. And the bartender was friends with me on Facebook and said, not today. My shift's over in 2 hours and then you can. I was humiliated, first off, and then I left and I stayed hanging around the bars for that first year of my sobriety. But 7 months into my sobriety, I had a doctor's appointment I was like really dreading. I had an appointment back in 2017 where they asked me how frequently I drank because my liver didn't look very good. And I lied. And I never came back to the doctors because I wasn't ready to face those realities. And when I finally decided I was going to face that reality, I went in to see a doctor I'd never seen before. Couldn't even tell you her name today. And she said, your liver's fine. Have you thought about weight loss surgery? And I was like, absolutely not. It's like, I was the coattails of the body positivity movement. I've been heavy since I was a teenager. It was easier to accept it than to try to change it. I had done every diet. I had metafasted and Nutrisystem and Jenny Craig and counted my points and bought the things in high school that are illegal today. Stuff that people are making meth out of now. Like, I was trying everything. Even as an active cocaine user, I was the female Chris Farley of cocaine. Like, I couldn't seem to lose weight doing anything. So I had accepted it and embraced it, and it was just who I was. And so, I felt like I was being challenged on who I was more than I was on my health in that moment. And I didn't take that suggestion very well. And I left begruntled and like, what does she know, And I'm not that person. I'm not on my 600-pound life. Like, I can wipe my own butt. Like, what is she talking about? Because that was what my assumption was of being obese. That's really what I thought. So I sat with that, but it was a 6-month process. Also, that time in my life, I wasn't working an active program in sobriety, so I was still making like a lot of really toxic decisions, like the relationship I was in at the time. They had said that weight loss surgery was a horrible idea, that I shouldn't do it, and we were fighting. So I was like, you know what? I will do it. I'll go to the classes. Because it was a 6-month process I had to start. So then I started that process, and that kind of led us up to my surgery in 2022.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I know you share your story a lot, obviously, on your social media, as you said. But I do think that you sharing that changes lives, because the comebacks, you can come back any day of the week. You can just decide you're going to stop alcohol, or you're going to start eating right, or whatever you want to decide. You can do that now. You don't have to wait till Monday. You don't have to wait till the new year. And I love that you've done that so many times in your life, as you just like got up and made the decision. And I know you said like you have no idea why or what was going on that day that you decided it, but I feel like that decision, right? Like deciding, okay, I'm not going to drink. That's the easy part.
Yeah.
It's all the days that follow that are like, oh shit, what did I just decide to do? I've had
plenty of hangovers where I said I'm not going to drink again.
Exactly. So what kept you going? I mean, obviously you were vocal about it. You had this community behind you.
Yeah.
But there had to be individual battles in which you had to fight.
I mean, every day there was an individual battle. I kept wanting to hang out in the bar scene. I thought that I could be the person who doesn't drink because I had met them. I had met those people at 4 a.m. at the Double Down. And I'm like, okay, they exist. I can be that person. Well, those people don't have jobs and responsibilities, and they don't have kids, and like they're probably doing other sketchy stuff. Because I had quit drinking, which is the key note here, but I didn't quit using cocaine. And I kept using cocaine until August 28th of 2020. 21. And that is my sobriety date that I use in Alcoholics Anonymous today. And I wasn't using it frequently. I wasn't the biggest fan of it without alcohol. It was a little too edgy for me. I just like was a little like, I'm already kind of an animated person. This was just like, you know, and so I didn't really enjoy it, but it did feel like I was participating in something in the bar scene. So I did that. So, you know, I was white knuckling it every day, you know, because you can do a key bump, and the first thing I'm thinking about is like, well, might as well drink now too, right? But I managed to hold that one off for whatever reasons, once again, clueless to me. But when that 1 year marker came up and I go, oh my God, I haven't had a drink in a year, a girlfriend of mine said, you should go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and get one of those chips. And I was like, absolutely not. You can forget that. And she goes, but you could put it on your Instagram. And I was like, all right, on my phone. Where's the first meeting I can go to that I can get down with because my family's going to see it. Everyone's going to know. I get to the finish line, right? So I went into a meeting on that day at 3:30 in the afternoon, and I've never been to a meeting in my life. And I was like, hey, like, and they were like, how, you know, who's celebrating a birthday today? And I see a guy take like 3 months. I saw a guy take like 9 months. And then when they got to the 1 year, I was like, me. So that, you know, everyone's cheering and they bring me a chip. And then they're like, okay, now everybody tell us how you stayed sober for the last year. And I listened to the 3 and the 9, and they're like loving their life. And I'm like, I don't got none of that. Like, what do you mean life is wonderful at 3 months sober? No, it's not. It certainly wasn't fun at 9. It ain't fun at a year. And then they asked me, yeah, Shenelle, have you stayed sober for a whole year? And I was like, well, I've never been to a meeting before, and like, this is my first time, and like, thought maybe I would just get some sober friends. I was just pulling stuff out of my butt at that moment, you know, to fit in, because I didn't know what else to be saying. A woman came up to me afterwards, and she did ask me how it's been to be sober for my own misery for the last year. And I thought that was like super, you know, see you next Tuesday. But it was also exactly what I was feeling, and she became my first sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, we sat down. It's not that we have a rule book in AA, but quickly was asked, when was the last time you've done, you know, some other drugs? And I was like, oh, well, Guns N' Roses, had some Coke. And it was like, well, you can't do Coke in the program. So you got a new date, and you got to get back that 1 year chip. And you can go get one that's like 5 months or something, whatever that number was. You know, so I had to kind of start that back over. But once I got into the program and I started to go through the steps, that's where my life changed, and I was on the speedway instead of trying to hitchhike my way to the next place in life. Everything changed the moment that I started working a 12-step program.
Was it the community aspect of the bar scene that you were so attached to?
Yeah.
Or what was it that made you, even after giving up the alcohol piece, be like, no, I'm still going to go here. I'm still going to see these people?
I think I've always felt like an outcast, and like the type of people I was hanging out with, they were that crowd. And I mean, I'm still friends with some of these people today. It's shit. Some of these people I've seen come into AA since back then, you know? But like, I like to run amok. I am a little bit of a disruptor, and that is the crowd that I ran with. I dropped out of film school 20 years ago, but I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be like the female Bukowski at the end of that bar stool, right? And I romanticized the scene, and I still to this day love it. Don't have a reason to be there, right? I loved childbirth, not gonna do it again, right? Like, there's certain things, like, I can respect where it is today.
Absolutely.
I don't find myself in that position very often anymore because I'm a little bit busier and stuff, you know, my life's different. But I can be comfortable today at a bar. It doesn't bother me anymore. But there was a community there, but I think it just was always there. It's kind of one of the people ask me what I love about Vegas. You know, why are you living here? What, you know, people have mixed emotions about this city. And I'm like, because it's always there if I want it. And I think that's what I liked about a bar is I could get into a bar anytime. There was going to be people to talk to, and there was going to be interaction, and there was going to be a bartender that had to serve me and could communicate with me. I think it just solved any sort of loneliness I felt by walking into a place like that.
That's an incredible answer, insight of probably why a lot of people walk in there late at night, early mornings, right? Because
early mornings.
Here's the thing, like, even if you're not someone who deals with drugs or alcohol, we've all experienced that voice in our head that tells us we're lonely, we're not enough, we're an outcast, some more than others. But we're all deep down trying to find a solution for that. And whether it's drugs or alcohol, or whether it's therapy, or whether it's AA or a mastermind, right? Like, we're all trying to solve that same issue. And we have these vices in going about trying to find that solution. I mean, I would love to hear your perspective. I feel like when I think about it, it's not necessarily a solution. It's doing your best to love yourself the way you are in acceptance. And that is like the hardest thing, no matter who you are.
I've had to make peace with a lot of the stories I told myself, right? A lot of my perception of my past is not accurate. It's just my interpretation. And honestly, my disease of addiction loves a good sob story, man. Poor pitiful me. You would drink my way if this happened, this to you. You know, we all have those things, you know, and today, like, I've come to an acceptance that the things in my story that didn't feel good are now like my biggest blessings, because they've got me to this place. They allow me to be relatable. You know, I remember in North Vegas, there was a plane accident a couple years ago, private plane, class one. The fellow in there who passed away was somebody in my recovery circle. I didn't know them personally, but they had a couple of young kids. And, you know, a lot of us had this conversation because they were a single parent. And it was like, whoa, man, like, why does the universe or why does God do this, you know? And I'm like, because, like, these 4 and 6-year-olds are going to serve a purpose at some time where they can share that experience and it will help somebody else. You know, I know it's like a messed up way to look at it, but if I'm going to sit here and be mad and point my finger at something that I don't really know exists or unsure of and can't define, that's not going to get me very far anyways, right? It's just easier to assume that all the things that happened brought me to the place I am today. And just like the reason I got to those dark places because those things happened, right? Like, it is just the monopoly of life, essentially. Like, I got to go through it to be able to help other people out of it. And I'll take that approach to it versus like poor me, you know, and talk down to myself and the woulda, coulda, shouldas. That's not going to get me anywhere.
Yeah, it's really having that dialogue, which I think a lot of times, I mean, I'm guilty of it, thinking I don't have a choice in the dialogue going on in my head. And I'm like, oh, that's just, like you mentioned, right? Like, the perspective I have is the only one. And it's like so far from the truth. And I have to verbally out loud say sometimes, like, that's not true. Or like, what are you thinking? Or what are you talking about? Because that voice is so overpowering and you really can be convinced it's the truth and the only version of the story.
Right, and that's why I have to run all my great ideas and my great versions of the story past a sponsor today, because they see the reality point of it real quick and point some stuff out that my ego is like blindsided.
Well, I think that's something that AA has really done right, is the idea of a sponsor. And I'm like, can we all have that in life? Because
I know.
You know, I don't think it's just for someone who's experienced addiction. I think we all experience some sort of level of crazy.
You can go down the rabbit hole on the 12-step stuff, but like, I think that Emotions Anonymous, which works the same 12 steps AA does, is probably something that just about 99.9% of the population today could benefit from. It's not rocket science. It's not like they created these things out of thin air. All these things have existed, you know, and people have taken things from the 12 steps. I have stuff from the 12 steps in my program. You know, we're not going through it. I'm not making them do, you know, a full 5th step or, you know, financial amends or anything like that. But there are elements we learn from those things and we apply them and, you know, carry on. So they're great for everybody.
I want to get into more of your weight loss journey. And obviously this was a really big in-between in your life, because what was born out of it is now your mission today and how you impact thousands of men and women. So can you share with the audience your experience in getting the sleeve surgery and what happened after that?
Yeah, so I had my surgery here in Las Vegas, and that center that I started to go to my classes to, most insurances have kind of the same rigmarole, but mine was the typical 6-month nutrition classes, which were like the things that we learned in middle school in nutrition when we were like learning about our private parts. Like, there's nothing there that none of us who were like, oh wow, really? Like, very slightly condescending to sit through that stuff and be knowing my insurance is being billed for this stuff, you know, at the same time. But yeah, so I did that. And I hadn't told anyone in AA that I was having surgery. And I hadn't told my sponsor yet. Because I thought once I tell people I'm having surgery, then I'm also going to be telling them I'm overweight. And I'm not sure if I'm ready to let them know about this problem of mine yet. And so I was hushy-hushy about it until I ended up telling my sponsor about it. And she had told me she had had the surgery and she had gained all her weight back. And I was like, oh, no. Because she had a significant sobriety story, significant amount of time, and I hung on to every word, almost every word that she would give me, and I was like, oh man, if she couldn't figure this out, I don't know how I'm going to figure this out. And so I got a little frightened by it, but during my beginning of my 12 steps with her, I didn't want to do steps 2 and 3, which is like finding a higher power. Most of us come in very like, about that one, and I asked if we could skip them. Which is a common question from people who don't know anything in the program. And, you know, she was like, yeah, of course, you know everything. How about you go home and write out for me what a sober woman looks like and how a sober woman acts? And so I wrote it out, and I wrote out the like Webster dictionary definition of being a mom, a girlfriend, and an employee. And she just pretty much laughed at my face, like, you're none of these things. How about you just try, like, some of the stuff you wrote down? Why don't you try acting like that for a few days? And I needed to hear that. And so I did, and my life started to come together when I started to be a grown-up, right? And so when I got more serious about the surgery and I started to think about, one thing is I didn't know who I was healthy. Like, I had never been that person. I was either, like, dieting and, you know, doing gimmicky stuff. I was dieting, or I was not giving a shit. I was tapped out. It wasn't my problem right now. I didn't know who I was in the middle. And so I had to go back and start like analyzing my life, which is the basis of what we do at the Bariatric Rewrite today with our clients. But for me, I had no idea at that moment what I was creating by looking at my life this way. And I went in, had my surgery. Things went well. I didn't really have any complications. I was at the hospital for 2 nights. I walked 7 miles in the hospital. I was on the leaderboard for the walks because you got to walk after the surgery for a few reasons, in pulmonary embolism, and also to remove the gases that they use to pump the stomach up when they do laparoscopic procedures like that. And so I was feeling really good. Like, surgery went really well, and I went home and I was like, oh man, I couldn't be bothered about food. I like don't want to eat. I get 1 bite. I can get 2 bites of scrambled eggs down and I'm full. Like, this is insane. It was insane. But I also realized I was really fixated on food. And I thought that was really weird. I was like, you know, kind of counting down on when I could eat again, even though like I didn't ever feel the sensation of hunger. And I got curious. So I started to do some research. If you would have asked me about food addiction before my surgery, I would have just, yeah, whatever. Wouldn't have really given 2 cents about it. But then I saw the overlapping correlation between the way I drank, used cocaine, and ate food. And I was like, oh, wow, look at this. They are very similar. And so I made a decision at that point that I was going to cut certain foods out of my diet. And, you know, haven't had fast food in 4 years, which was like the biggest problem I had was fast food. I didn't want to be inconvenienced. I want quick and easy. And I had to just accept that that didn't work for my health. Yeah, so surgery that went well. I lost my weight quickly. I was at my goal weight by month 11. And as far as this textbook, I'm 10 out of 10 best case scenario of somebody. Yeah. I had a great experience with the surgery. I speak highly of it. I think it's amazing. I think it's a gift. It's a privilege to get it. There's thousands of millions of people in the United States who need it today and will not get access to it because of their insurance or their employer's decision to not add obesity care to their plan. So it's a privilege that I had it and that the company I worked for at the time did cover it, and very grateful for that.
So you go through the surgery, you start to uncover this food addiction and make decisions like give up fast food and those types of lifestyle changes. And I could imagine that was a lonely adventure as well because, again, right, like you're making these tough decisions where,
yeah,
I love what you just said. You said, I couldn't be inconvenienced. And that was like, whoa. It really is almost like a victim mentality of like, oh, well, I don't want to be inconvenienced to go home and make food or to even just go to a grocery store and get fruit versus french fries at a fast food place. And that just like hit me. I was like, wow, it is a version of victim mentality to choose the harder option and go out of your way or wait till you're home or prepare food to bring. So in all of this, you're secretly, without even knowing, building a business for people that are going through what you are currently living through. When did you discover, like, maybe this is a conversation that others could benefit from?
Funny enough, I had a 0 following and people were stitching my videos and talking mad shit. Like, wow. I was insane for not eating fast food after bariatric surgery. That I don't know what I'm talking about. And it was just from other bariatric people with a little bit more time. You know, there's this hierarchy of like, well, I had my surgery 4 years ago and you had it 4 months ago, so I know more. And she probably does know more. I won't disagree with that. But, you know, I was pretty stuck in my ways that I wasn't going to entertain these foods. And I didn't come onto social media right away. Like, I had my little space on Facebook, my little normal personal space, and I was sharing updates about my journey there. But, you know, my road to social media, it was incredibly ironic on how all of that unfolded. My house was in foreclosure, like I had mentioned. And when I sold it, I was able to use the COVID situation to my benefit and actually make a profit, not be in foreclosure anymore. And so I had some cash. And what I did was I went and paid off everyone I had screwed over financially. I paid a year up in my condo for my son and I, paid my car off. I was sitting pretty, and I had a little bit of money in my bank account, and silly old me mentioned it to people I shouldn't be mentioning it to. who I thought were just decent friends of mine, and they weren't. And I got taken advantage of. Someone asked $20,000 from me to start a business with them. And because in AA they were so highly liked and applauded for all their things they did for people, I just didn't even bother to enter their name in Google. It was the fall of 22 when I did it. I had owned a business before, like I said, but I hadn't fully owned a business in the sense that I do today with the Rewrite, with the amount of employees that we have and, operating as a corporation, all these things. But back then I didn't know very much, and they took advantage of it to the moon and back. And I didn't make any money from them, nothing. And then in December, they said to me of 22, why don't you quit your job and come help me, and kind of pointed the blame on me that I'm not pulling my weight enough, even though they were just taking that 20 grand and cashing themselves out a paycheck every month. So I quit my job because I thought, I've invested now. And I quit my job, and guess what? I don't have anything to do. Like, I didn't really need to do anything. I ran a few errands for this individual, but like that was it. So what do I do with my free time? I was on TikTok. I started making videos about my journey and what was going on. And that's when people started to pick up on it and were just talking kind of negatively to me about it. But that's when I knew, I was like, well, shit, I'm talking about eating real food after the surgery, and that's controversial. There's something fishy here, something very fishy. And in March of 23, somebody had asked me to help them and said, can I send you like $50 and you help me out? And I was like, sure. I had no intention of having a job. I was just talking about me, what I was doing. And so I started taking on a couple of clients, and I went and built a little website, and I was like, I think I linked it up to Shopify because that made real sense at the moment. And I would sit on TikTok live and answer questions. It was starting to come together, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I made $100 this week. This is insane because I have no money coming in, right? And I'm living off my limited savings. And then that summer, the individual came to me and said, I'm going to pay you back. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. They said, I'm going to give you every dollar back and then some. And it's going to take me a year, and I'm going to do it in this payment plan, have me sign a whole contract with them and all this stuff. And I got like a small payment of like $2,000 from them. And then the second payment, and I thought, well, this will be paying my rent now. I'll pay my rent, and I'll see if maybe this Rewrite thing will take off for me. I've got some breathing room. And I got that first payment, and then the second one didn't happen. And I called him, and my phone number was blocked, and I was blocked on Facebook. I'm like, I just saw this guy in an AA meeting yesterday. Like, what in the world? And when I got a hold of him, he just pretty much told me to kick rocks. And I looked, he had dissolved our LLC without my signature. And have come to find that this is just a frequent thing he does in the rooms. And AA operates this principles over personality situation. So he's continued to do this, does it to this day. But I have to tell you, I'm thankful for what he did, because I had to learn some hard lessons. Google people you give money to. Number one. Go do that.
Good one. Yeah, share that.
And I need to not run on my instinct of being liked and being part of a certain community, because I got involved many times doing silly things with stupid people because I wanted to be liked by them. And it wasn't why. Why did I want to be liked? What was it? Was I that lonely? I want to be part of that group of people, right? Those people aren't doing great things. They're taking money from people. And I stayed in the program and stayed sober, but I thought about quitting AA. I thought this happened because of AA. Well, it didn't, right? I would have sold my house if it wasn't for my sponsor. She helped me with that. So I can't say this is an AA thing, but then I think about the person who comes in 3 weeks sober and gets involved with this individual. They're not coming back. They're going to relapse, and their resentment's through the roof. And, that person has a larger liability with that, but I could rant about my opinion on this individual for about 5 hours. I'm not going to do it today. I see him in a room. I saw him in a room 3 weeks. Can't make eye contact, of course, right? But I had to sit there in that moment and think, what are you going to do? Do you want to go find another 9-to-5 job because you didn't really enjoy that and you've never really done well at that? Or are you ready to give this 36 hours of a 24-hour day and continue to show up as a mom, continue to be active in AA? Can you do it? And I was like, that's the choice I'm going to take. I doubled down and worked like a beast between helping people and building things on the back end. In 3 years' time, it has exploded. And obviously there was a much needed space in a world full of delusion, which is that the surgery, you just continue to eat the way you did beforehand and nothing will happen. But with a 50% rate of weight regain, something ain't mathing up.
Yeah,
that's the logic.
Absolutely. And so when these individuals find you on social media, they're consuming your content, and then they decide to join the program. Can you walk us through, like, one, where are they at? Where do they start? And then what's the ending? What's the goal? Like, are they a part of your program for the rest of their life? Are they using these tools, learning them, and then flying off into the real world? Or how does that program, how does it work?
A little bit of both. Our program is a lifetime program. So when you join, I mean, there's a cost to get in, of course, but then once that's paid off, you never pay again. We work with people in either a 4-month or 12-month intensive. We spend the first month just sort of slow rolling the diet. 60% of our clientele have regained their weight post-bariatrics. And so we transition them to a whole foods diet. That the client is never different than the next. They're living on protein shakes in the morning, protein bars in the afternoon, Chick-fil-A for lunch. Like, they're not getting any fiber. They're not eating real foods. They're maybe still doing 1,200 calories, but they're somehow magically still gaining weight. So we just transition them for a month over on the diet because I know my kind. We want to do everything at once, and that's never really panned out for us. So we do it slow, and then we spend from there the following 3 months to 11 months, depending on, once again, on how they come in, taking a look at the lifestyle. None of it's food. I know how to eat. That's never been the problem. I could write an expert book on how to lose 20 pounds in a month. I've done it. I can't keep it off. Why can't I keep it off? Right? It's the systems I have. It's the emotions that I carry. It's my resentments. It's my stresses. It's my lack of having a life beyond my next meal. And so those are the things that we look at and rebuild from the ground up. So it's a mix of one-on-one coaching and group. I put people with a group because you have got to hear your story from other faces. You cannot just think that this is just you. Oh, if you didn't have 4 kids and a husband that doesn't care, like everybody else has that situation, I need you to see it, right? Or that you just have a stressful job that doesn't allow you to have breaks when you need it. So does 4 other people over here. Let's all work together on this. Like, we get very caught up in being terminally unique, and that is just a gateway of failure every time.
How do you, in the beginning, I don't know your sales process, but let's say they have an inquiry or whatever that looks like. Do you feel that people are hesitant when you tell them, like, we're going whole food, we're doing all these things, we're pushing you both mentally and physically, or they're like, this is it, we're ready?
They've watched a few videos.
Yeah.
I like to think they know. Some people catch me off guard when I'm like, so we're going to do this. And they're like, what? And I'm like, did you Google me before you got here?
Yeah.
You know, but most of them know. And then, you know, that also creates that same food funeral shit where it's like, well, my program starts in 2 weeks, so I'm going to, you know, eat these things now, or silly things like that. And I try to discourage them from doing it. Like, don't fall down that rabbit hole. Or the person who's bought, you know, a 24 case of Premier Protein and they're 4 years post-op. And I'm like, we're not going to eat that. Well, I just bought it. Give it away. Hold on to it for the apocalypse, man. That's just got a great shelf life.
Like, seriously, it does. What do you find, I mean, whether it's the longer program intensive or the shorter one, what do you find to be the biggest roadblock that you know that people are almost there? Like, they almost have made it to the other side, but it's just an in-between that feels uncomfortable.
Themselves. Like, when the lightning bulb comes that every finger that's been pointed everywhere has to be turned around, that you cannot blame the husband, you cannot blame the kids, you cannot blame the job, you cannot blame the mother-in-law, you cannot blame the past. You gotta take responsibility. You choose what you're putting in your mouth. You've made these choices. And when I see people make that breakthrough, because our program is 20% food, but it's 80% about what's happening between the ears. You know, I don't have some magical macros that's going to solve this for them. We're going to fight through really hard things together, because it's not just me that they get paired up with. We have an entire coaching team they have access to 24 hours a day, because these decisions don't typically happen at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. You know, it's going to be the weekends. It's going to be late at night. We've got to walk through it and start to build up a callus. So I'll get these text messages that are like, oh, it's me. Like, it's like, I'm the problem. You know, I'm like, welcome to the other side.
Yeah.
You've crossed the bridge, man.
And what are the practical strategies you implement after that? Again, it's easy to say, like, yay, it's me, I'm taking responsibility. And then it's also really easy the next day to make the same decision over and over again. So what are like I'm going to use the word professional, personal development side of things of like, here's what we're going to implement in order to get to the other side and be able to train ourselves to take that accountability.
So we teach them to do something called nightly inventory. So we start looking at our emotions every day, the things that we felt in the morning. Wherever the resentments lie, we have to work through them. So if we're mad with the husband, let's talk about it. Like, don't leave it between the ears, you know? And a lot of the times we have built up such a pile of things that we're irritated about, you know, that we haven't just addressed. If you want to move on, you got to make peace with your side of the street. You got to clean up. Don't ask them to clean up their mess, right? The individual that I gave that money to, right? I take full responsibility. I didn't Google him. I didn't look at who he was, right? I didn't ask any questions. Whose fault is it? It's mine. And I take responsibility for it. I could have sat back and moaned and groaned and quit AA and got a 9-to-5 job, right? But I had to take responsibility. And even just saying that I take the responsibility for it makes it easier for me to move forward. So, we have everyone do inventory here where we start looking at the resentments. Because, you come home and the husband didn't do the dishes, or you wake up in the morning, the husband didn't do the dishes. So you say, screw it, I'm going to go to Starbucks and I'm going to grab a muffin and a caramel macchiato because he didn't do the dishes, because the kitchen's not clean, because now I can't make my breakfast. Like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
You made that decision. Have a better plan about how those dishes get done. And if you are that bothered that he consistently does this, then ask yourself if that's a marriage you want to stay in. Like, when I got married in December, and I was instructed by women of AA to write down 5 things that my husband does that I fucking hate. And so I did. And they said, are you cool with those things? And I was like, yeah, actually, I'm not. They're fine. They're like, as long as you're cool with them, move forward, right? If they never change, And they were, of course, silly things. They were just the silliest little things. But now I can take responsibility and say, if I complain about one of those things, my girlfriend can be like, but we said we were cool, Yeah, and so I just take the control, man, and have the hard conversations, because the women I work with have dieted their whole life. And between dieting, between diet culture, and between body positivity, there is a lot of blame game that goes on. And also a lot of lack of education on the disease of obesity, and that this isn't just a personality trait that you get to decide on January 1st you want to take care of and then be over with by mid-February, right? A cancer patient doesn't do that. But with obesity, we've been almost programmed since we've had our periods that this is something that's, when you care, you care. When you don't, you don't.
Yeah. It's interesting. I interviewed on the podcast the eating disorder clinic of Las Vegas, the founder, and that episode was very, very eye-opening for me in the sense of the background that she's done and the studies she's done comparing fat shaming, obesity to really racism, and how far back it really does go and how ingrained it is in specifically, United States culture. And
yeah,
you're exactly right. Like, when you really start to develop those conversations and notice the thought patterns, both as an individual and watching other people, it's very clear to see how it would be hard to choose different. I mean, it's obvious why you blame other people when that's the narrative that's being told to you and that you've accepted.
100%. And I think that those of us who have been obese, myself included, are just as guilty as shaming as those who are not. We have our own thoughts, our own judgments, our own comparison perhaps. Well, I wasn't that bad. Like I said at the beginning, I wasn't on my 600-pound life, right? Still had the same disease, but I wasn't there. It's like when I watch Intervention and I'm like, well, I wasn't prostituting, so
yeah.
I didn't get that bad, right?
Where's the line, actually? I really appreciate your perspective on all of this, because I find sometimes people are one way or the other, right? Like, maybe they agree with the medical side of what you're talking about, of obesity,
yeah,
of eating disorders, but maybe they don't fully accept the victim mentality and like hold yourself responsible for this. And I really respect you for what you do, because you hold both and you say, hey, both can be true. Like, this sucks that we're in this position and this is how people treat us and this is the system, the medical system that we have. But also, like, where are we responsible? And I was listening to you thinking about, there's a show that I'm obsessed with on Hulu right now called Extracted. Have you ever seen it?
No,
okay.
I haven't.
So basically, it's really silly. It's like one person gets put into the forest and they have to like survive, and their family members are in HQ like watching them. But there's a new season and I watched it last night, and there's this family, it's a mom and a dad, and their kid who's 20 years old is put in the forest. He's talking all this big game. The dad is like, he's going to win. He didn't even last like 12 hours. Like, he was genuinely, the victim mentality was like, you have to get me out of here. Like, I'm going to die. And my boyfriend and I were watching it and we were like, this is like kind of embarrassing. Like, the entitlement, I don't deserve to be here and be stuck in the forest, right? And it's like, man, I was thinking about it on my walk this morning. I'm like, obviously it's a little parents and it's a little culture, but I do see that as like, there is just a really big, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve to do the hard things.
Yeah.
I deserve the easier option. And I believe what you're teaching is like, no, you don't. Like, sorry, that's not how life works. And that's also, here's the crucial part, like that's also not how you become a strong, resilient person. If you don't do the hard things, if you don't have inconveniences sometimes and feel frustrated or bored, like, sorry, you're not living up to your potential.
Right. 100% agree on all of that. The girls I work with, they are very stuck in this. And we try to break it, and most times we do succeed. And I think we succeed because we had to break it for ourselves. It's a little bit harder to hear it from somebody who's never been there.
Absolutely.
Oh, you can do it, you can do it, just blah, blah, blah. And I was like, nah, man, like, it's hard. And I identify as being addicted to food. Not every girl I work with is going to, and nor are they asked to do it. And I know that the medical field has its own opinion on this because it's not in the DSM yet, that food addiction isn't real, although there's a heavy amount of science that points to this at this point. And that's where it gets so hairy for some of these gals, is that they're eating things they shouldn't be eating. They go back to the bariatric surgeon 3 years later. They suggest a GLP-1 or get them back in front of their dietitian. They get in front of the dietitian, more proteins, get back on the shakes, go back to the basics, and then nothing really happens, and they just circle this like drain, and like it's hard to not get frustrated then, because medical wise it's not set up to have a long, thorough conversation about the reality. You see somebody diagnosed with like a terminal cancer or any kind of cancer, someone sits down and pulls a chair up and holds your hand.
Yeah.
And says, I'm about to break some news. We're going to change your life.
How has your industry changed with the GLP-1 conversation? Because I would assume like when that came, weight loss surgeries changed a bit, but is it something where if someone comes to your company and they maybe haven't had the bariatric side, but they're on a GLP-1 experiencing the same cycle that you've experienced, that you help them?
Oh yeah, we take them. We're like, get on in here. And what'll happen, it's always the same story. What happens is they start the food transition, and by week 3, they're struggling to hit the amount of calories that someone needs to continue to live correctly. Even bariatric, they can't get to like 800-900 calories. They're like, oh my God, I'm so full. Well, it's like, yeah, because that medication slows down how long food's going to stay in your stomach when you're eating the right things. Now, there is 1000% evidence that there are people who will be on this medication with the surgery, and that will be their treatment plan. But you can get this medication without being asked anything about your diet. You can get it anywhere today, right? You can get it on the internet. I'm sure Amazon delivers it. But no one's saying, what's your diet look like right now? What's it look like? And, they come over here and they, more times than not, communicate if it came from their primary or their surgeon to get off of it. When they get it from somewhere online, we kind of like, it's up to you if you want to continue on at this point, but they usually have to come off of it. It doesn't change our nature of the business. Whose business it has changed is the bariatric surgical world. They have seen a 30 to 40% decline. However, the medication does seem to make a better bariatric patient. If you've got a 65 BMI and you can get that BMI down to 55 with the medication, you're going to have a safer surgery. But it is a lifetime marriage, and nobody really criticizes insulin either. Insulin's also a lifetime marriage for type 2 diabetic. Like, you're on that for the rest of your life, and nobody has that same rigmarole about the long-term use of a GLP-1, but it is more expensive. Insulin is relatively cheap today and covered. This medication, depending on what age you start at, you could spend anywhere between $150,000 to $300,000 the rest of your life out of pocket at the current cost that's presented. Bariatric surgery is a one-time cost. And my surgery was $1,000 out of pocket, which for me and my insurance plan was 3 months of a GLP-1 if I wanted that route. Statistically, you see better odds with the surgery. You see a quicker path to the weight loss. I think that the fear of surgery is scary. In bariatric surgery gets just knocked right up there with plastic surgery practically. That these are just very vain choices and you don't need to do it. It feels very scary to have a procedure, but I think that the surgery is the answer over the medication for very specific BMIs.
So, you mentioned social media, and your path to your business kind of grew via social media. And I always like to chat about this because in my other side of my life, I own a social media agency. And so I love talking to business owners, and your story is like the perfect setup for this because you started and you surround yourself with social media. But greater than that, and greater, in my opinion, than your business, is the impact that you're able to make on social media, through social media, using your voice, using your business that you've built. How has social media positively impacted your business?
Yeah, I mean, we are all social media. We actually didn't start Facebook ads until October of last year when that just felt like the next right step. Yeah, so everything was organic. People were finding me on TikTok. They were joining. We have a free Facebook group. They were, leaving comments, I need help. So we shoot them a message and say, how can we help you? And like where everyone has come from is just from finding us on socials. I mean, I do stick out a little bit with the hair. I know people are quick to recognize me.
It's an easy distinction. It's great.
Yeah, it works in my benefit. I'm stuck with it for life at this point now. But that's the only way we've connected with people. A lot of people go to social media for post-op care with these surgeries. The post-op care is very, very limited with the surgery. You're given a set of papers that should get you through the first year, and then you're pretty much on your own, kid. And the insurance industry does not look at post-op care as preventative care. It's just something they don't even want to mess with or could care about. And so you get really lost. And that's where the rewrite has just sort of fill in that gap of what the surgeons can't do. And like, they want to do it. I've talked to so many of them that wish that they could help more, but they are limited in time and resources, man. A lot of these centers that agree to see you years later because of Regain don't make any money to even bring you into the office and put you in front of their dietitian. There's nothing they can bill for, And so there's this massive disservice. Doesn't happen with cancer, just very limited to obesity. And that's, where people go to the internet then. Well, let me see what other bariatric people are doing. How are they figuring it out? And if you go down the rabbit hole of bariatric social media, everything's about food. Everything's about how to mimic what you ate before surgery. Everything's about what to be adding into your water because regular water hits a little funky after surgery. So people are living off artificial sweeteners from the morning they wake up until they go to bed. Everything's about how to add proffies and what to make into your proffie thing and all this crap. Like my Taco Bell order 4 months post-op bariatric. Like it's just all so food-centered, and you can just get wrapped into that world real quickly. And then I end up seeing them 2 years post-op and they're experiencing Regain.
You've taken what everyone else is doing, flipped it on its head, gave a new narrative. You have the purple hair. It's like people are going to find you eventually and it's going to be a different perspective, right? So you do have that marketing in you, I can tell, because you're already doing it. You're doing all the things right. But I find it so interesting because it's like your story, and specifically on social media, is why I believe social media can be such a positive thing. And it does get a bad rap, and rightfully so. But when someone takes it and does it right and offers the right help, I mean, social media at the end of the day is free. And even if someone can't afford yet to join your course, they can binge your content and learn enough. And that's from real-time experience because I spent the morning binging your content and I was able to learn. So I can't imagine if I was in this position that these men and women are in, and I can start implementing changes because you're offering this real-time advice, right? And then in a social media perspective, like I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, now you got all this free resources. The only thing you're thinking in the back of your head is like, what the heck would happen if I hire this team? My life is going to be so different if I spent the money to take it to the next level versus just stalk her on social media. And so I appreciate your story because it really shows the power of what social media can do. And it started off maybe as a way for accountability and a way to, share your story and look back on it. And now it's just turned into something that's like quite literally changing millions, most likely, of lives, both in your course and without it. And I just commend you for that because I'm sure you hear it all the time from your clients and your world. But as like an outside person in consuming your content, I just really felt like I can tell this person is both passionate and educated, but you care. And it comes from a place of like, I want to make the world better and I want to make this demographic better because I've been here and I know how much it sucks from what's coming in. And so, I want to commend you for that because you are doing a really, really great job.
Appreciate that.
I am so grateful that you joined me on this podcast because, one, I loved getting to learn your story more, but more importantly, I think your mission of educating people on this broader issue is beyond important. It's just like anything else today. If we don't talk about it, there's no change being made. I really believe that people who are listening to this are going to find impact. And I would love to close out this episode asking you, maybe from the perspective of someone listening to this that maybe has considered doing bariatric surgery, or maybe they've already done it and they're in that in-between moment of like, what the heck, this is not what I expected, or now I'm nervous about it. what advice would you give them and what would you leave them with?
Yeah, if you're thinking about getting surgery, it should feel scary because it's a completely life-changing moment. Everything I have from my life today is because I agreed to do it. And it doesn't always come easy. There is an exchange rate. Some things don't always go well, but neither does maintaining at your current weight, right? There's a host of long-term complications to stay there as well. And for anyone who just had the surgery, dude, if you don't regret it for a minute, you didn't have it. I would call you surgery.
That's the truth.
I mean, there's just a moment where you're like, oh my gosh, like, when can I eat that again? You know, when can my stomach not be bothered by this? Like, those sorts of things, right? But you also have at the beginning a whiteboard, a brand new whiteboard of who you are and what's important and how you're going to move forward. And write your story before the light bulbs turn back on and the desire to eat comes back, because it does come back 6 to 12 months, depending on your circumstances. Start going out with your friends without food. Go to the birthday parties and say no to the cake, right? Get new hobbies that are not scrolling Pinterest and looking for stuff to make. Just start to build that new life so that when the lights come on, you already have the life there and you just eat to keep that life there. Don't reintroduce your problems and they won't become your problems again.
Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom, sharing your story. I really appreciate it and I am just so grateful.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on the In Between podcast. We'll have all of the information that you need to find Shenelle, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope this conversation gave you exactly what you needed to hear, whether that's permission to slow down, motivation to keep going, or just a reminder that you're not alone in the in-between moments. Now, if you're a female founder or a value-driven brand looking to build meaningful connections on social media, I'd love to work with you. At Cassidy Lynn Social, we help brands express their authentic voice through strategy-driven social media management. Head to CassidyLynnSocial.com to learn more about how we can work together. And if you've loved this episode, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Screenshot it and tag me on Instagram at Cassidy Lynn Social. And if you're going through your own in-between moment right now, keep showing up. The growth is happening even when you can't see it. I'll see you next week for another in-between conversation.